In June, the household survey reported that part-time jobs soared by 360,000 to 28,059,000, an all-time record high for part-time jobs. What about full-time jobs? Down 240,000. And looking back at the entire year so far in 2013, just 130,000 full-time jobs have been added, offset by a whopping 557,000 part-time jobs. And there's your quality versus quantity, ladies and gentlemen. Quality versus quantity. So keep that in mind when I bring you the next story from our friends here, let's see, at Breitbart. Only 47% of adults have full-time jobs. The release of the June jobs report on Friday may have been a relief for the markets, but the report provides clear evidence that the nation is splitting into two. Only 47% of Americans have a full-time job, and those who don't are finding it increasingly out of reach. Of the 144 million Americans employed last month, only 116 million were working full-time. 58.7% of the civilian adult population of 245 million Americans was working last month. Only 47%, however, had a full-time job. Is that not stunning? In June, the number of Americans who wanted to work full-time but were forced into part-time jobs jumped 352,000 to over 8 million. Is anybody talking about any of this? Or are we still hung up on comprehensive immigration reform and how to turn 11 million people who came here illegally from foreign countries into American citizens? This is what Congress is focused on. This is what the media are focused on, Obama's focused on. And I have to talk about it too because, well, we have to engage. Then this one from our friends at CNS News. Notice I haven't cited a so-called mainstream news site yet. Since January 2009, when Obama was inaugurated, the U.S. has seen 54 straight months with the unemployment rate at 7.5% or higher, which is the longest stretch of unemployment at or above that rate since 1948. Period. Done. Now, what does all of this tell us? And when you consider the massive expansion of the food stamps program, when you consider the massive expansion of Social Security disability, what does all of this tell you? It tells you that the experiment for over a century of status utopianism is miserable. It's destroying people's lives. It's destroying our country. In so many ways, this is just one aspect of it. That's what it tells you. This failed experiment needs to be stopped, and yet they won't stop it. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Look at this Obamacare. So now that we know that statism doesn't work, what can we do about it? Well, if you look to Washington, D.C., you can't do anything about it. Why is that? Because Washington, D.C. is the perpetrator. Washington, D.C. is doing this. And I'm going to tell you, it's not just Democrats. My friend Sarah Palin has spoken out effectively, articulately, with great knowledge and confidence about the destruction of this federal Leviathan. And every time she does it, she comes under a personal, vicious, brutal attack, not just by Democrats, but by Republicans, particularly Bush administration officials. Do you want to know why? Because they not only disagree with her, they disagree with you and me. Because the Bush record is one of profligate spending, massive expansion of government. In no respect did they reverse course to try and reestablish constitutionalism. The tax cuts were great, but surely we have to be more than about that, because that's not going to reform any system. That's why they attack her as viciously as they do, and quite frankly, anybody else who has the guts to speak up and confront this. Others, like Ted Cruz and so forth.